Gonna hang out, wait a couple minutes. Let's see what we can get here. This way. There we go. Let me set my camera up here. I'm gonna wait about 35 more seconds, and then I'll probably just get into this, or maybe even save this for later. We'll see. But Brother Lauren, what's going on? Actually, I was getting ready to call you this afternoon, Brother Green. I'm hoping that we have another person that's going to sign up for Transaction City. I had a nice conversation with an author last night, so we're going to see if they'll come on over to the waters, climb out the mud puddle. But we're going to see. But another day in the cruel hard world, man. You done said it all right there. That is so true. So true. Hey, Brenda. That is so true. It's rough out here. Well, I tell you what, got my man Brother Green on, and I see Sister Brenda stopped by. I want to get into just self-publishing in general. There are tons of material out here on self-publishing, so there really should not be any excuses in the mistakes in when you're making your mistakes or what's going on, because there's no reason why you should not be doing the research first before you get into wanting to publish a book. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a wonderful thing, but the first thing that you have to do, Graham, what's going on, sir? The first thing that you have to do is make sure that you're doing the initial research. Now, you may go, what do I research? Just some basic, simple questions in Google will take care of itself. How do I publish a book? How do I self-publish a book? And the reason why you do that, it doesn't mean that you have to undertake it all by yourself, but you want to have a working understanding of what you're about to get into. Let me just give you a little background about me. Yes, my name is Keith, K.L. Belvin, but I write under the name K.L. Belvin. A lot of people know me as K.L. Belvin. Some people know me as Keith Belvin. Some people know me as Big Dog, whatever. But I have written 3 of my own books. I have 2 more on deck that I am working on, actually very deep, and going to finish up in the next coming months. I've been a part of 6 anthologies. I've been featured in Ebony Magazine, and I've been a part of Black Expressions Book Club. My book From Gigolo to Jesus was featured in Black Expression Book Club, which was featured in Ebony Magazine and Essence Magazine. But apart from that, my wife and I were in Ebony Magazine for the things that we do that are connected to the books also. I wrote my first book in 2007, published it in 2008. I started my publishing company, which is a literary service providing company, and I'll explain what that is as we go along, in 2010. And so I've been around this self-publishing game for about 10 years now. So I know a little bit about my lane, and I know a lot about other people's lanes enough to avoid them. And I work with a lot of authors because I am big on giving free advice, simply because what you do, what's for you, is not going to affect me. I'm not scared to share with new and veteran authors because I'm not worried about them taking from me, because there's space out here for everybody. But let me just explain something to you right now while you're listening. Not everybody thinks that way. And not everybody believes that there is space. So not only are they going to fight to keep you out of their lane, they're going to find a way to come over to your lane and look to do damage, because they believe by slowing you down, it's going to help them make more money. So let's make that perfectly clear. It's not true, but you got to understand that with self-publishing, a lot of who your character is comes through in the way that you do business, because you're your own boss. And let's be real, when left to their own regards, a lot of people out here filthy. Whereas my brother Lauren Green just said, another day in a cruel, hard world. Please understand that when you're trying to self-publish, it's going to be cruel and it's going to be hard because there's not enough money on the table in certain areas or arenas of self-publishing because when you're doing it yourself, you can't reach the masses. So there's money out there when you write books, when you have a machine behind you. But when you're doing it yourself, man, listen, that mud puddle gets smaller and folks is in there fighting for elbow room. And when they're in that mud puddle fighting for elbow room, they're going to fake it. They're going to lie about it. They're going to say a lot of things because they believe it's going to help them gain their position with their book and their focus. I'm going to share this with you. Learn to get past that. Learn to understand. Okay, yeah, definitely. Well, that goes back to what I said about the research. If you do the research ahead of time, you limit how much someone can lie to you. Now, people are still going to lie to you. Listen, like I just said, let me give you the definition of self-publishing because I think it's very important. I was looking this up on Google today. It's a verb, action word, but it actually says of a writer publishing a piece of one's work independently at one's own expense. And that's very important, at one's own expense. Your financial expense and your personal expense, your integrity, everything is online when you publish your work. So what you got to understand is that you know that there's filthy people out here in the world. So when you're coming into a business, you have to do the research of what it is that you want to do with your books to get an idea and understand of what you want to see happen with your books. Because if you don't know, well, like I used to tell my students in the classroom, ignorance costs. You're going to pay if you're ignorant because people sit and wait on ignorant people every day. There are people that are only in this industry because they know that there are stupid people out there that will pay them. I was able to let her get through women's conferences, workshops, such which led to a lot of book sales. You really have to market yourself. Of course, I'm going to get to that too. Is that comes down to, again, at one's own expense. Now, your time is your expense. Your finances is your expense. Your knowledge is your expense. So the real question before we even get into anything is, what do you know about what it is that you think you want to do in this arena? Okay, you wrote the book. And I'm not going into the techniques of writing books and all that. That's not what it's about. I'm talking about when your book is done. Because you can get into the aspects of creating a book, and that's another thing too. But for this conversation right here, right now, at this particular second is, you got to know, you got to have an idea of what that's going to be. And you got to know how to put yourself out there and know what to do, what you're looking at, what you're considering, and how you're going to go about it. I thought I saw Sister Wilson pop on. Barbara Wilson wrote a book that I got back in 2007. She wrote a book on self-publishing. I had that and 6 other books that I used to help give me an idea because I figured I'm going to start to see a reoccurring theme between different folks talking about self-publishing. And I did. And then I was able to figure out how that's going to work for me and what I'm going to do for myself and my books going forward. That is so important. Do you understand what is it that you're trying to do with your book? What areas are you weak at? What areas are you strong at? The areas that you're strong at, lean on those. Get yourself out there and lean on those areas of strength. Enhance those areas. And then the areas that you're weak, reach out and get with solid people. You wouldn't buy a house on a fly. You wouldn't buy a car on a fly. There's no reason to try to publish your book on a fly. Yes, technology has made it easier. Everybody's publishing books. We know that. Everybody's putting something online. We know that. Everybody's writing ebooks. Everybody's doing whatever. Close all out that noise. What are you doing? And who are you surrounding yourself with? And who are you reaching out to get your information? And then how much time are you then reinvesting back into yourself and your book? What's your budget? Do you have the money for the things that you say you want to do? Because if you don't, then that becomes a whole different type of research. There are a lot of free avenues to go, but you need to understand what those avenues are. Because, like I just said, hey, Phoenix, what's going on? Hey, Kimberly. Hey, Tennille. I just said, if self-publishing is you doing it independently, then you got to be very, very wise in where you choose to spend your money and who you choose to give your money to. I hear all the horror stories. The first 3 years, while I was out, I think I traveled up and down the road, and I limited it to the East Coast. I wasn't getting on a plane and traveling out west unless somebody was paying me, because nobody knew who I was, and I wasn't laying out that type of money, and I knew I wasn't getting it back. So one of the first things I said to myself is, if I can drive there, then I'm going. I'm not laying out all this extra money when I knew that that money wasn't coming back on the back end. That's a decision I made for myself. So I figured the far as I would go, North and South Carolina, maybe Georgia. And I would do book events up and down the East Coast, and I met a lot of people. And so that was one of the things that I made the decision for myself was, I'm going to go to different book events, but also I didn't get caught up on just book events. I went to every event. I went to African American festivals. I went to anywhere there was going to be people that they would let me set up a table. I'll find a way to work my book into whatever the crowd is talking about. Do not overlook sometimes the very smallest things to be a part of if there's going to be people there, because the idea is to put yourself in front of people, talk to them, get them to buy your book. And yes, you're going to hear all the big time publishers and everybody that spends all their time, and they're going to tell you know who your readers are. Well, when you're first starting out, you may not have a clue. So that's something that you need to research. And then you got to figure out how you're going to get yourself out there so people can understand who you are. Because how do you know if the person is going to enjoy your work or not if you're not out there having conversations? And that feedback is extremely important. That feedback of people telling you what they read, what they don't read, getting practice at being able to sell. That's another thing too, being ready to sell and being able to sell. Because too often we want to sell a book. We actually don't know how to sell a book. And then we don't know what to say to sell a book. And then we don't know when to shut up and take the money for the sale that we just made. Sometimes we talk ourselves out of a sale because we want to keep selling, even though the person has agreed to purchase the book. And sometimes people purchase the book just to get you to shut up. So you got to work on that. And you can't do that from your house on the internet. You got to be out and amongst people, which means you got to go to various type events. Now, why do you go to the big events? Because you need to see how the super professionals are doing it. You need to see how the heavyweights are doing it. You need to see how the people who this is what they do for a living are doing, so you can see that, analyze that, and bring that back to your lane. Take the meat of what you saw, use it, throw the rest away. Reason why you go to conferences. It gives you a chance to get close to other people. It's a form of networking that a lot of people miss. You don't always have to go there to try to sell anything. Just pay for the conference so you can be there amongst other people so you can talk. 2008, I went to the Black Writers conference in Tampa. That's where I got to meet Sister Wilson and a ton of other authors who I had met online. And that weekend alone let me know I can do this. I was able to put my self-published book up against other books to see if my work was as quality as theirs. It was. I was able to watch other people, how they sold, and I realized that my techniques were similar, and I was able to learn some techniques. And then sitting in the conferences